Hello, my name is Cassidy Corbett, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Chapter 12 of Oral Presentations for Technical Communication. Chapter 12 discusses presentations that explain how to perform a task. Today I'll discuss what are how-to presentations, the types of how-to presentations, tips for creating your how-to presentation, and preparing your own how-to presentation. So what are how-to presentations? How-to presentations are task-oriented communication, which means helping an audience learn how to perform a task or a series of tasks. How-to presentations are used to help audience members use and understand the technologies in their everyday lives. Oral how-to presentations have the advantage of being able to see for yourself if the idea of your presentation is catching on, and you can directly answer audience questions. There are 3 different types of how-to presentations. The first types of how-to presentations is a training presentation. The main goal of a training presentation is to teach or train audiences about a specific product, service, or procedure. The most common of training presentations include presentations that teach an audience how to use a software product, and this type of presentation helps users learn the specific features of this product. So for example, a lot of tax companies will, like TurboTax, will have demonstrations of how to file your taxes using their software. Other types of training presentations include hardware training, which can mostly means computers, but can also mean any type of machine or apparatus. Technical communicators often provide training in how to use all kinds of hardware, from computers to farm equipment to biomedical devices. The second type of how-to presentation is a product demonstration. The main goal of these types of presentations is to demonstrate how a product functions or operates. And the most common of these types of presentations are sales presentations, where the communicator is using a product demonstration to convince customers to try the product. These use real models or scales and often require lots of planning, preparation, and setup time. The third type of how-to presentation is a procedural demonstration. The main goal of these presentations is to teach how to perform a procedure or a task. The most common of these procedures are scientists demonstrating a new procedure or engineers studying various ways to construct something. This is not done on real items. They use models and simulations for these types of presentations. So I have several tips for how to creating your own how-to presentation. The first one is to begin with a strong introduction. While this is true for all presentations, it is especially true for how-to presentations because people learn best if you immediately grab their attention and give a clear overview. And you also, during your introduction, you need to use excitement and enthusiasm. This helps create a big picture of what the audience is to expect. A helpful task is also analyzing the task your audience needs to perform. And you do this by task analysis. And task analysis is researching and studying what your audience needs to know throughout the task or the series of steps. So you do this by adapting your audience purpose research to include your task analysis. You use task analysis to learn as much as you can about the audience. And you conduct task analysis by interviewing the audience to see how much they know and observing to see what the audience already knows. Another helpful tip is to follow an appropriate organizational pattern. The most effective how-to presentations are organized in a deductive pattern with a chronological order. And be sure that your material is outlined correctly to follow what organizational pattern you use. You need to be sure to tailor your presentation to the specific needs of your audience. There is nothing worse for an audience to attend a how-to presentation only to learn its level is either too high or too low. If they already know the basics, they do not need introductory material. Use the audience and purpose in task analysis to determine what the audience needs to know. So if they already know the basic steps, you don't need to tell them the basic steps. So for example, if you're explaining how to download this type of software, if they already know to turn on their computer, open up a browser, etc., you don't need to tell them that. But if they don't know that, then you do need to tell them that, and you figure out what information they know by performing task analysis. Another helpful tip is to determine the correct level of instruction. Is the purpose to teach every detail, or is the purpose to teach every detail about how to perform a task, or is the purpose simply to overview the basic steps and let everyone practice later? How to determine how much time how you can do this is by how much time you have, and how much time you have will determine how much information and how in depth you can go about something. You need to, another helpful tip is to determine the right level of steps. Once you know what level of instruction your audience needs and expects, you can determine the level of steps you'll include. Step-by-step instructions or less detailed instructions. More steps equals less background information, and less steps equals more experience that the audience has. More complex presentations require greater attention to the appropriate level of steps. Another helpful tip is to use action verbs. Use action verbs to begin each step in the series. Action verbs create an immediate sense of exactly what the person must do, and make sure the verbs are specific and constant. Don't overload the audience with too many steps. Determine the proper level of steps, but you also must be careful to not overload the audience with too many steps. A clear sense of purpose will help you understand what the audience needs. Shorter time equals more limited steps. Use handouts to help you. In case you don't have time to go over all the steps in more detail, the handout will have more option for your audience to follow. And you use audience purpose and analysis to determine how many steps your audience needs. Use the appropriate organizational scheme for explaining steps. The simplest way for doing this is a numbered list format, which explains the steps involved in a task in sequential order. Use a handout or a PowerPoint to help you do this. Other schemes that are appropriate is a description scheme, which describes the step, a checklist scheme, which you use if you want the audience to remember to perform certain tasks in advance or use certain items. The action response discussion scheme is where you state the action the user should perform, followed by a response that can be expected. In the question list scheme, if task involves many possible conditions, and if your audience perform the procedures on their own, you may have questions, and they may have questions. You can also form the information in the questions. So, say you're trying to download a software, and you have Windows and you have Mac. And so a lot of question list will explain, if you have Windows, do so, and if you have Mac, do the other. Another helpful hint is to prepare handouts. This allows your audience to perform tasks on their own. It also allows a place for your audience to take notes and write down questions. Basic handouts contain a list of certain steps and procedures in your presentation. Make sure handouts are consistent with your presentation. Make sure your steps are easy to follow. Practice to see if steps are easy or hard to follow, and make adjustments. Make sure the level of language is correct. Allow ample time to set up. Make sure all your props work and everybody can see it. If you're using a projection, everybody can see it. And allow ample time for feedback. So, preparing your own how-to presentation. You want to select a topic for your how-to presentation that is appropriate for your career or your field of study. You want to have something that is interesting to you. Otherwise, you won't be interested in it and it'll be like a drag. Perform thorough audience and purpose analysis. Outline your presentations. Concentrate on the specific task you want your audience to perform. Do a thorough audience analysis to determine the scope and detail of your presentation. Outline your presentation to help the steps you will explain. The purpose: to instruct your audience about the use of product or a concept. Use the topic you require. The topic you may require you to use a product demonstration. Your primary research will consist of being sure that your demonstration is adequate and allows your audience to understand your idea and perform the task you describe. Time: most of these how-to presentations are given in 10 to 12 minutes. Visuals: for this you'll need to determine what is best for your presentation. Most use handouts or slideshow, but make sure they are easy to follow and can be seen. Okay, so in summary, how-to presentations are the most frequently given presentations in technical communication. Along with documents, how-to presentations require face-to-face instructions on how to operate or complete something. There are three main types of how-to presentations: training presentations, product demonstration, and procedural demonstrations. Remember to remain focused on what your audience needs and the tasks they need to perform. And remember, don't overload your audience. Thank you. Have a great day.